Welcome to the first installment of this year's ARTSpeak program. ARTSpeak is an interdisciplinary program presented by the Departments of Fine Art and the History of Art, and includes a series of lectures and panel discussion on the theme of the obstacle race. This theme explores the difficulties artists face in today's urban economic environment and the means of overcoming them. Other ARTSpeak events this academic year include student visits to artist studios, an exhibition in FIT Library of work by fine arts majors to be curated by and with catalog text written by art history and museum professions majors. The ARTSpeak Committee would like to thank Joanne Arbuckle, Dean of the School of Art and Design, and Patrick Knisley, the Acting Dean of the School of Liberal Arts, for their generous support and commitment to this program, and the Student Faculty Corporation for making this event possible. We also thank our chairs, Stephanie Biennial from Fine Arts, and David Drogan from the History of Art, and Anna Bloom, Associate Chair of Art History and Museum Professions, for their support as well. Our speakers today are Andrea Arubula, Seth Cameron, and Sean Carney. I'll just say that Andrea, I just found out today, is a graduate of FIT from the photography department, which I think is, all right. They're members of the artist collective, the Bruce High Quality Foundation. The Bruce High Quality Foundation is a group of anonymous artists. They're not so anonymous right now. I'm sorry, I broke your cover. It's all right. They're gonna, I checked with them, so it's okay. It's okay. And who use performance and other interventions to critique the institutions of the art world. And they have exhibited their work at the Whitney Biennial, the Lyon Biennial, and Lever House in New York. They had their first retrospective at the Brooklyn Museum in 2013. They also have organized something called the brussenial. There have been 5 brussenials. I've been to 4. And it's, if you think of the title brussenial, it's obviously an ironic play on the biennial, probably the Whitney Biennial. The brussenial is a more inclusive, including established artists and emerging artists, and it's always a great show. There's usually performance events involved with it, work of all kinds. It's a wonderful. I don't know whether are there going to be more brussenials? Who knows? Maybe we'll petition for it. They also have started the free school, the Bruce High Quality Foundation University. It offers programs, public programs, and exhibitions year-round, and operates a cost-free artist studio residency and other programs. So please welcome the Bruce High Quality Foundation.
Here is a syllogism. It is useless to resist. All art is quite useless. Therefore, art is resistance. But I don't mean what you think I mean.
Resistance and futility, evil and error in art school are art school's own uses and actions. The sins and sufferings of art education are always its own improper involvements and mixtures, its own mindless realism and expressionisms.
So, you started an art school. What the hell does that mean?
Is it real? Is it an art project? Is it a prank?
The humiliation and trivialization of art education in America during the last 3 decades have been the easy exploitations.
And eager popularizations of art education by the American art world.
Chelsea and Lower East Side expressionists mix their art up with live muckraking and art marketing.
Social and political expressionists used art as an action on the public, but succeeded mainly in expressing themselves.
The business boom of the affluent Bush years orphaned the alienated artists.
But the panic of 2008 witnessed the tender engagement of art to government, business, and war.
By 2009, armies of art's offspring were off to school and Sunday school.
Crusading for art education and religious decoration.
The ice has been broken.
The ivory tower flooded by unschooled professionals, the walls of the academy washed out by school primitives, a sanctum sanctorum blasphemed by faux folk, Bauhaus Bacchuses and housebroken samurai.
The conception of art as fine, high, noble, free, liberal, and ideal has always been academic. The argument of free or fine artists has never been between art and something else, but between true art and art submitted to
Some other quite different values. There are no two arts, there's only one. No one person can embrace true art until they have explored and cast out false art.
The Academy of Art, whether the Western or Eastern ideal, has always aimed at, quote, the correction of the artist, end quote, not
the enlightenment of the public.
The idea of the Academy of Art in the 17th century
of aesthetics in the 18th,
of the independence of art in the 19th,
and of the purity of art in the 20th restate in those centuries in Europe and America.
the same one point of view. Fine art can only be defined as exclusive, negative, absolute, and timeless.
It is not practical, useful, related, applicable, or subservient to anything else. Fine art has its own thought, its own history and tradition, its own reason, its own discipline. It has its own integrity and not someone else's integration with something else.
Fine art is not a means of making a living or
A way of living a life. Art that is a matter of life and death cannot be fine or free art. An artist who dedicates their life to art burdens their art with their life and their life with their art. Art is art and life is life.
The tradition of art is art out of time, art made fine, art emptied and purified of all other than art meanings, and a museum of fine art should
exclude everything but fine art.
Higher education for the artist should be liberal, free, and the learning of greatness.
To teach and enlighten is the task of the wise and virtuous. No great painter was ever self-taught. Artists must learn and learn to forget their learning. The way to know is to forget. The guardian of the true tradition in art is the Academy of Fine Art. With minor editing, everything we've just said is from Ad Reinhardt's 1953 essay, 12 Rules for a New Academy. These statements don't do the work of answering the questions we've been asked about the Bruce High Quality Foundation University since we opened it 6 years ago.
How have you raised money? Who's in charge? What is your curriculum? What is your agenda? Who are your students? What is a school? Is it real?
Instead, we do the work that actually needs doing in an art education. We induce the skeptical mind.
There are many problematic, contradictory, fearless, funny, and even very real problems for artists to grapple with.
These problems are 60 years our senior.
We are not afforded the luxury of answers. We are grateful to have the luxury of continually redressed questions.
Our conception for what an art school should be, of what an art education should be, is first and foremost that it should be artful.
It does not have one solution, it has many.
And these solutions ultimately don't solve anything.
Art education is an exercise in resistance and futility. The professor is art itself, and the students are every artist ever.
We believe in our school as a thing, an ever-evolving group of artists who are making it up as they go along. We believe we have no business creating institutions that don't function as liberating metaphors.
Today, it is our belief that the institutions of art, whether they be museums, nonprofits, schools, or foundations, would do well to learn from the material that they purport to support.
And art education must be art, or it shouldn't be at all.
With minor editing, everything we've just said is from the Bruce High Quality Foundation University presentation, Resistance and Futility, given at the 2010 Creative Times Summit, Revolutions in Public Practice, held in the Great Hall of the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art. The original version of the presentation was presented by Maria Dizia.
Maria was later featured in the 2011 film Margin Call, a fictionalized account of a large Wall Street investment bank that highlights the initial stages of the financial crisis of 2007 to 2008.
You may also know Maria as Polly Harper in the Netflix original series Orange is the New Black. We are not Maria Dizia.
And we are not Bruce High Quality.
We are not the Bruce High Quality Foundation.
And we are not the Bruce High Quality Foundation University.
My name is Seth Cameron.
My name is Andrea Rula.
And my name is Sean J. Patrick Carney.
And we would like to tell you the story of how we found art.
And found friendship.
And found ourselves running a school. Robert Rauschenberg, Bernie Mac, Charlton Heston, George Carlin, Estelle Getty.
In 2008, Barack Obama was the president of the United States. And the Bruce High Quality Foundation did their first retrospective, which was actually the first public exhibition. We've been doing projects out in the world, different kinds of interventions, and this was the first time we did something inside of a traditional art space. It was at the Susan Inglett Gallery, and so we had to create all the work to invent this past.
Michael Jackson, B. Arthur, Jean-Claude, Pina Bausch, B. Arthur.
So in 2009, we did what could be referred to as the second brussenial, which at this point we called the Smithumenta because we were housed in the studio of the painter Ray Smith. It essentially works as an open invitational exhibition. So we tell our friends, they tell their friends, and they tell people they vaguely like, and then you try to put everything on the wall. And then that guy starts singing. That year, 2009, we also did a film project as part of an exhibition on Governor's Island. The film was called Isle of the Dead, which featured the participation of about 300 primarily amateur zombie performers who we asked to come out to Governor's Island and look at images of what had happened in New York art world in the late 60s, and also for them to sing a rendition of Bryan Adams' Summer of '69. This was our studio at the time on Broadway in Brooklyn, right under the bridge. That's what it looked like on the inside. And on September 11th of 2009, we opened the Bruce High Quality Foundation University. It was a project that started as sort of a kitchen table experiment where we had a lot of friends looking at graduate school and other things, and we were thinking, well, this is a really expensive thing to do, and what do people really need or want from their experience? And it seemed like everybody wants a lot of the same things. They want critical feedback, they want to be around their peers, they want a sort of dedicated time and space to think through their work. And we thought, well, that doesn't need to put everyone in debt. Maybe we should just open our own version. So we did. Got a little bit of press for it. This is an image from one of the classes that we did first. They were they're making stuff, but they were all working together to sort of recreate in film a book by Camus, whose title I've already forgotten. This is our first Halloween party, so that's the inaugural class outside of our first schoolhouse in the former Sufi books.
Lena Horne, Gary Coleman, Rue McClanahan, Lucille Clifton, Dennis Hopper.
So in 2010, we were asked to participate in the Whitney Biennial, and what we really wanted to do was to get a hearse and drive around the country to visit art schools as a way to kind of learn how they're working and what we could adapt from them and move forward. The Whitney didn't have a budget for that, so instead we just got the hearse, took out the engine and the chassis and rebuilt it in the space with a video that's projecting through the screen called We Like America and America Likes Us. That was in some ways a response to the Joseph Beuys performance when he came to America, called I Like America and America Likes Me, where he traveled by way of hearse to the gallery, never setting foot on American soil as far as he was concerned, and then proceeded to live with a coyote for a period of time.
Where else have I seen that car?
It's also the same cars from Ghostbusters, which is convenient. Simultaneously with that show, which was kind of a big moment of getting some institutional credibility, we thought we didn't want to forget what we were really about. So we opened another brussenial, this time much larger. We had about 420 artists working in 666 different mediums from 911 different countries, all participating in the same kind of deal. Everyone brought their work in. We tried to fit it all on the walls. And this is the chassis and engine from the hearse. So you could either go uptown and see the hearse, or you could go downtown and get some free beer on what was left of the hearse. That year we also did our second retrospective, this time at the Bruno Bischofberger Gallery in Zurich. He was one of the first dealers to show Andy Warhol, and so in homage to that relationship we started a portrait series. Andy Warhol had been doing portraits for a long time, all the same size, all screen printed, done the same way, and he had a kind of, bargain arrangement. You bought one, it was one price, but the second and third and fourth one would be cheaper. You could get a monochrome for much cheaper. So we decided, and his sort of catchphrase about the whole thing was that he was selling them for $25,000, and he said, anyone can be famous for $25,000. And so we decided that anyone could be Bruce for not quite as much money. But, and so Bruno was our first person to make a portrait.
Cy Twombly, Betty Ford, Steve Jobs, Amy Winehouse, Muammar al-Gaddafi.
So in 2011, we finally got our ducks in a row to go out on the road and do some research. We got in touch with Creative Time and asked them if they would help us put on this tour, which we called Teach for America. We had to change how America is spelled because of a cease and desist letter from the actual Teach for America organization. I don't think anyone else in the world was confused about what we were doing, but just in case. So we visited 12 cities over the course of a month in this school bus. At each city, we would give a talk about what we were up to and how our school is functioning, and then we would also meet with smaller groups of faculty, people that were running alternative projects in the different cities, and sort of open it up to them telling us what they were up to and how their cities function, how artists in their cities work. And it was a really wild experience. One of our last stops was here at PNCA, Pacific Northwest College of Art.
I went to school at Pacific Northwest College of Art, and in 2011 I was a faculty member there teaching critical theory and thesis writing, which are really exciting classes. And I saw the Teach for America tour. I knew the work of the Bruce High Quality Foundation and went to kind of see what this talk was about. As they talked about the merits of free education and self-organization and kind of DIY artist schools, I realized suddenly that I had just never been told that I had the permission to do something like that. I always thought that institutional access was the way by which an artist got certain accolades and things like that. So a group of friends of mine and I started our own school in Portland that was called the Conceptual Organ Performance School. Obviously the acronym COPS came before we figured out how to make that into a name, which I think might be similar to this institution. Whitney Houston, Vidal Sassoon, Trayvon Martin, Etta James, Ravi Shankar.
In 2012, we did the 4th edition of the brussenial. This time it was even bigger. And one of the key elements of this was we used it as an opportunity to talk about our educational programs. We put on a performance called Animal Farm, loosely based on the novella. There were actually pigs involved, but other than that, it really had nothing to do with the book. In our version, it was a story of a school sort of falling apart under crumbling finances and building too much architecture. It was basically exactly the story of Cooper Union. And then some pigs, otherwise known as artists, decided to start their own school, which involved a lot of hay bales. That year we also did a project, this is called The New Colossus, which is technically the name of the Statue of Liberty, or the name of the poem emblazoned on the bottom. This is a 10-foot version of a 10-foot bronze version of a Union scab rat, which is used to protest non-union labor. Ours is a lot heavier and was installed outside the Lever House looking into their offices. We also moved into a new space for the school. This is before we put our fancy letters up on the windows.
What are those?
It took how long before there was the realization that there were 5 windows and 5 letters in the acronym? Okay, year. Aaron Swartz, Nelson Mandela, Margaret Thatcher, Joyce Brothers, Lou Reed.
In 2013, we did what we thought of as our 3rd retrospective, but most people probably thought of it as the only real one, at the Brooklyn Museum, where we gathered together a lot of the projects that we have been doing since 2001, both inside and outside of various institutions and commercial situations, and put them all in this former cafeteria of the Brooklyn Museum.
What's that boat?
One of our earliest projects was called The Gate, not the idea, but the thing itself. The Whitney, in partnership with some other nonprofits, had recreated posthumously a sketch by Robert Smithson, where it was a proposal, where he decided to recreate a miniature Central Park in a barge and float it around the island of Manhattan. He just sort of drew it on a napkin, and then the Whitney decided to raise a few $1 million to actually put it on. And this was about a year after Christo's Gates project had happened, so we decided that Smithson's project deserved its own public art intervention. And so we attached a gate to this little dinghy and tried to catch the barge. We were not successful. That same year, you can see we like vehicles. We crashed these 2 cars together. as part of a sculpture called Art History with Passion. Meanwhile, this is a class happening at the school. I don't know what class that is.
It might have been a performance class.
This looks like it was a performance class based on the bowl of rice. That also looks like a performance class. Those always make for the best pictures. So.
Gabrielle Garcia Marquez, Joan Rivers, Maya Angelou, Robin Williams, Oscar de la Renta.
In SFW, the last brucennial, oh right, the one before this was 4. Yeah, the last brucennial is the 5th brucennial, which was called the last brucennial because we didn't want people to keep asking if we were going to do another one.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work, and we're probably going to do another one. So this was definitely the biggest one that we had done to date. We actually did have over 600 artists involved in putting up the exhibition. The only change that we made this time around was that it was all female artists. So if anyone ever asks, why are there no female artists? We know about 600 of them, and we have a list. This was a sculpture that we did. You can see we're inspired by these social situations in other work. So this is a party, or the aftermath of a party that we created as an installation in Brussels called Vive la Sociale. This is a class being taught by Brad Trammell called Chat Room that ran for, I think, 3 semesters.
In 2004, the BHQFU had the crazy idea to make their first studio residency program happen in the summer to 2014. That's what I said, right?
2004. Yeah.
Whoops.
14.
That would be cool,
Back
right?
in time. And I was lucky enough to find out about it on the internet and applied. I had been a year and a half out of school, out of FIT, and I was lucky enough to have a handful of teachers here that had directed me towards what I was interested in, which was fine art, or just the art world, a bigger version that what actual institution presented to me at first. And I was able to continue that at BHQFU during the summer for 3 months. I just had, me and 4 other people, including Carney right here, had a loft in the East Village to just make art, or not make art, or just think about art, or hate on art. And that was single-handedly the most freeing experience I've ever had. And it made me realize that I do truly care about art, which after graduation was very hard to really even come to terms with. So that was fun.
ASAP Yams, Leonard Nimoy, Sandra Bland, Blake Brockington, Noah Davis.
In 2015, as part of the project of the university, we opened a university gallery, the Foundation University Gallery, or FUG. Our first exhibition was with a friend of ours named Noah Davis, who's primarily a painter, based in LA. He was one of the early people involved in Bruce High Quality projects, and he was always of a very similar mindset, had founded an institution in Los Angeles called the Underground Museum. And so we asked him to put on the first exhibition in this space, which combined some of his work along with the work of his peers and sort of community from Los Angeles and beyond into an exhibition. Noah unfortunately passed away not too long ago. But we were very happy to be able to put on this show with him. The show we have up right now is by the painter Betty Tompkins. It's up until October 17th. It's called Real Ersatz. Betty came into prominence in the 70s with a series of paintings called the Fuck paintings. Bleep. There's a bleep for that. That are somewhat sort of photorealist blow-ups from, like, taken from pornographic imagery that are then made in with airbrush, sort of very meticulous process of these airbrush paintings that become somewhat abstract, also clearly not that abstract. And the exhibition is sort of fascinating because she's returning to some of that work from as far back as like 1970, and some of the paintings in the show are done through a printing process, some are done completely in airbrush, and some are kind of a combination of the two. So the exhibition actually kind of plays with your attention and how close you're going to look at these things. The next thing that we have coming up, which Jeff already conveniently advertised, is a party called Arcadia. It's an exhibition and a concert and a party all in one. These are some of the paintings that are going to be in that exhibition that are all Poussin landscapes reimagined in a different way. And we're going to have some really great performers playing. Leaf, whose album just dropped. Francis and the Lights, Brianna Lance, Justin Strauss, and some members of House of Ladocia. House of Ladocia is also going to be doing an exhibition in the new year, in January, as part of the ongoing gallery project of the school.
And if you're interested in the community or Bruce High Quality Foundation's work, the gallery space, or the free school that we run, this is a wonderful place to kind of go in for the first time and meet a lot of different people in a really fun, casual environment. We have a tiered ticket pricing thing, so if you're a student and you have a access code, it's $30, and it's an open bar, and it's a party that goes all night, and it's extremely fun. Last year we had Dev Hines, who's a friend of the school's, who does Blood Orange, was the featured performer, as well as a bunch of other people, and it's a really amazing space to come and kind of meet a bunch of students, and happens right around the time that our second session of classes start this fall. We're doing 2 7-week terms instead of 1 14-week semester. It's also an opportunity to come and see, I think, is it okay to? So we have been in the East Village for a few years. The space, the FUG, has been there for not that long, under a year, but in the interest of keeping the school tight and the mission profound and its connection to the studio and the original sort of motivations for it, we're going to be reconfiguring the school, the gallery, and the studio space all in a 12,000 square foot space in Industry City in Brooklyn. So all of the action that happens will happen in one comprehensive space, which is really exciting. And so this will be the first show-ish type of event in the new FUG space, which is going to be about 4 times bigger than our gallery now.
Which is in a basement, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's not in a basement. It's on the 6th floor. You can see the Statue of Liberty. It's actually a really beautiful space, and we're going to have a giant new classroom, and we'll be launching a year-round studio residency program that will basically be our version of the MFA, except it doesn't cost any money. And you get teaching experience, and you get to meet a bunch of really cool people and share a studio with the Bruce High Quality Foundation. That is a competitive process. Obviously, we don't have enough space for everybody, but we'll be
Still
announcing.
free.
Yeah, it's still free. We'll be announcing that stuff soon. So I think that's about all that we have to kind of pontificate on.
Where is Industry City? Is that the neighborhood?
It is, yeah, like Sunset Park. It's the D, N, and the R all go right there. And it's pretty amazing. The space is kind of unreal. We're pretty thrilled to be able to merge all of the things together in one space. It's going to be kind of outrageous, actually. It's really exciting. And we just had our 6th birthday, so it seems apropos. But we're happy to answer any questions if people have any. Or comments.
The what?
It's 33 34th Street. right off the 34th Street stop.
36th Street?
36th Street stop.
Yeah, the
of D
36th
and-
Street D, N, and R all stop right there. What's that?
On 34th Street.
What street? I think it's, I want to
It's
say
at the end of
Second Avenue. It's like right where it becomes water. So if you get off the subway and just walk until you run out of buildings, it's that building.
If you
the
see
last building
cobblestones,
on
you
your
got
right
it.
on 34th Street. Think of it as the Miracle on 34th.
Yeah. The Bruce High Quality Foundation came into existence in 2001. It was, pretty much just anarchy for a while. Everybody was doing a lot of different things, and it kind of gelled and become more focused and less focused and more focused again over the time. I was still in art school at that time. Yeah. I think with our first projects, there were probably about, it was kind of like 8 or 9 people. Like when we first made a big head that we decided to all get inside of and call it Bruce, it was a pretty loose thing. It wasn't like we had some kind of big membership meeting. We were all just like, hey, we're making a head. Who's coming over? And the voice that we chose was a computerized voice. At that point, the Macintosh computer had only, I think, 4 different options for voices, and one of them was Bruce, and there was a slightly better version called Bruce High Quality. So we went with that one, and the name unfortunately stuck, despite being incredibly long. Yeah. But we should have had a cool name like Cops. That would have been better.
We don't have any students named Bruce, which is really weird.
Not one?
Oh, 0.
There is a simple registration. We just actually rolled out a registration this past fall. Before that, it was kind of just come in anytime, drop into whatever. But it sort of started to get in the way of learning, which is kind of our main goal. We wanted to keep that clean. But what would happen be like 80 people the first couple of classes, and then it would dwindle down to 20 or like 15, which is what you want, and like a real, have some sort of good dialogue. But because we are this weird, crazy place, we are allowed to sort of try things differently every time. So for this semester, we thought that maybe just having a registration that would help us kind of gather information, as we are a nonprofit now, BHQFU is. And then we have a questionnaire by the instructors, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and I think that we had to make some relatively difficult decisions this past fall for the first time ever, which was, for instance, Seth is leading a creative writing intensive course that had 130 people apply to it. And that's not a very intimate environment to share your writing with people.
I'm not even sure we can fit that many people in our
Yeah, I think it's actually
space.
illegal to put that many people in this school by fire code. But so we had to make some decisions based on people's sort of registration application forms and try to put good groups together while at the same time keeping in mind the people who'd been in our community for a while and making sure that everybody who wanted to go still was able to take a class. But oftentimes to people, because of the way it used to be where you would just drop your email in and you were enrolled, was people would sign up for all 6 classes and really only take 1. And so we just tried to create a way that there was some accountability on both sides, both from the student body and from the people who were working there day to day, to make sure that the classroom environment was still rigorous. We had 743 applications for fall, which is 10 times more than the MFA program that I used to work for averaged. So it was a little overwhelming. But now with a move to a new space, we're going to have considerably more room, and we'll be able to really kind of run a selection of classes that are totally open and pretty wild and anybody can show up, and then some that are by design kind of have to have an application because really you want about 20 people in a class, otherwise it's not really great for anyone. And we're still in talks about what spring is going to look like exactly, but that's kind of one of the exciting things about BHQFU versus, I've worked at a lot of schools like NYU and Virginia Commonwealth and PNCA in Portland and all these things, and just the idea of like changing the slightest bit of a thing in a normal school, it does take a really long time. You have to go through several different committees and faculty approval and all these things, and we can sit around, have beers at the end of the day, and just be like with the faculty sort of spitballing about what do you want, what works best. And so we kind of have a model that we'll be announcing soon. We're going to tweak it a little bit, but I think what we've come up with is a really, from feedback, because we take a lot of critical feedback from our community, I think what we've come up with is hopefully like the bestest version so far. We try to do that every semester, and it's like you always learn. And the cool thing is that, you know, we're not a real art school. Like nobody's paying tuition, nobody's degree is in jeopardy or anything like that. So it's kind of like we can do these types of switches and see what happens and change it up. But the best, if you just go to the website, bhqfu.org, and sign up for the email list, we do send out blasts and announce when class registration is happening. Also, if you use social media, if you use Facebook, our Facebook page is really where we put up all of our public programs. We still, even though the class registration is closed right now, have a ton of public stuff that happens all the time, which is really cool, and an active student council, which is its own class.
Do you want to talk about your class, which is coming up on our second session, which is open to the public?
Oh, sure, yeah. If anybody wants to just dip in and see what like education anarchy looks like, starting October 28th, every Wednesday through mid-December, the class that I'm teaching is called Chopped, except that it's Art Chopped. So if you've ever seen the Food Network show Chopped, where contestants are given mystery baskets of ingredients and have to compete under pressure in front of judges and get chopped each round, my class is that, but with art supplies. And we're bringing in a really great guest list of people from, the judges will be like the Bruce High Quality Foundation, Jason Musson, Jeanette Hayes, Bill Pohida, Nayland Blake. All these really amazing artists are coming in, and the students will get mystery art ingredients. They're already registered, but the audience thing is open. And they have to compete in, instead of appetizer, main course, and dessert, it's group show, solo exhibition, and career retrospective. And the judges judge them based on technical prowess, aesthetics, and conceptual rigor, but they only have 5 minutes to make the pieces to kind of keep everything going along. And if anybody's going to be in Miami for Art Basel Week, we've been invited to do it at the Standard Hotel. So there will be an Art Chopped Miami. If you're around, come by. It's an open bar also. We're very into open bars and free events.
Complete
Granted,
chaos.
this does cost money,
Friday.
but this is also a micro fundraising thing, and is like, it's a really awesome thing. And all the money goes back into like running the classes and making sure that everything happens. I mean, we're, like Dre said, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, so we're very accountable to make sure that every dollar that we bring in through philanthropy and fundraising is used responsibly in the service of the mission that we're putting forward.
You make decisions as a group in terms of the projects you did, like your clauses, how you put that together as a group, or did individuals come up with ideas and everybody agreed, oh yes, let's do this there? Can you talk a little bit about the process when you did partnerships?
In general, we follow a no voting policy. So we don't vote. Like, everyone has to be on board for something to happen. Obviously, ideas come from all over the place, whether it's one person has a really clear idea or it comes out of a conversation or sort of larger brainstorm. But our general, the only real rule about how things happen is that, I guess this is sort of like an early, we did this before Occupy Wall Street, and I don't know all the hand signals and stuff that they use, but the idea is that, you know, we don't say, all right, who wants it to be blue versus who wants it to be red, and then the majority wins. Everyone has to finally agree on purple. So you just fight a lot, basically. Yeah, they're pretty fluid to some extent with each other. I mean, a lot of the times the art projects take on a different character. It kind of really depends. I mean, a lot of things that we do are very social, so they involve kind of community of the school in a really specific way. But we're not really sure what the distinction is all the time. Yeah.
There's there's a legal distinction.
Yeah.
There's a BHQF Inc. and BHQFU Inc. are technically legally two separate entities. There's a lot of, like Seth said, fluidity between them. But the kind of cool thing that comes out of that, and I think Dre's main job is she's our student liaison, so Dre interfaces like day to day with all of our community and is really the sort of like your own buds person. That's the right word, right? At a school, person you go, the own buds person. It's who the students go to like talk in confidence. It used to be called an ombudsman, but that's,
knows what you're talking about.
it's a thing. But the cool thing is that the lead that the school kind of presents, like I was saying earlier, that when I saw the talk, all of a sudden I felt like I had this permission to do something that I just didn't feel like I was allowed to do, and I have no idea why I didn't feel like I was enfranchised to do it. But the cool thing is that the school becomes this hub that then all of these people that are like the kids taking poetry, they start to organize these events outside of school that happen at galleries or studios or apartments that include their entire community and aren't necessarily called a BHQFU thing, but if they ask and want it to be, we're happy to, help out. But it creates all of these weird things where the fluidity goes in between, and all of a sudden, I think the thing that we talk about a lot when we're thinking about our programs is how can we, as sort of hokey as this sounds, how can we present a kind of optimism to people who are interested in art making and also demonstrate that when we talk about the art world, people automatically assume that we mean the art market. That's where all conversations go, especially here in New York. That might not be the case in Kansas City, but in New York City it certainly is. And we're really just trying to demonstrate by example that there are lots of art worlds and you can exist in multiple ones of them at the same time, and that BHQFU is a parallel to art school in general. It's not necessarily a replacement or something that pretends like it can do everything that a regular school can do. It simply exists as an alternative.
We can really.
Well, when we move, we're going to.
Yeah.
So that's going to be.
When is that?
We'll kick off after MLK Day in January. And I think the dates are fluid a little bit, but House of LaDosha, which is going to be an insane exhibition. If anybody's not familiar with their work, I highly suggest checking out House of LaDosha. And that's going to kick off in mid-January, and then the semester will start after that. And we'll also be, with the opening of the exhibition, doing a kind of open house event for people, too, who want to come in and talk to the faculty or see what the new facilities are like and kind of hang out and get a sense for it a little bit better. And you'll be able to sign up for classes and stuff like that.
Would you guys say that your biggest strength versus like a regular school is that you allow space for student artists and regular artists to branch out from just their mediums instead of having to declare like I'm a photographer or my major is literature? Like you make it easier for artists to sort of create ladders between all these different art forms and bring them together?
Well, I think because we're not really running like a credit hour type program where you really feel like, okay, you've got to get your, whatever it is now, 128 credits in over the course of 4 years, and those mean certain things for hours, and there's a curriculum that's been constructed. We really run more, in some ways more similar to how you would think of like continuing ed. So anyone is free to sign up for the poetry class and the sculpture class and the painting class, and we encourage people to take as many things as they want. But there's no like system that says you have to be taking 4 classes or 2 classes or just 1 class.
Yeah, I think that the biggest propeller of that sort of mentality is that because there is no transaction happening, like monetary transaction, and a lot of the times people that had never gone to art school or just have a minimal interest in art, like, found us. They're able to just sort of like slip in, and it's not awkward for them because the school provides an alternative space to have the conversations that you may not feel so comfortable having, say, here at school, or like somewhere like FIT, and I'm just speaking from personal experience, because a lot of the talks that maybe I would have with my peers in college would be about sort of like the art market side of it, of like, how do I make this a career? What am I going to do after I graduate? You know, and it sort of starts becoming this like rat race between what's supposed to be your community. And so what happens at FIT is that everybody's there because they're tired of having that conversation and they want to talk about something else, which is art. You know, so that drives a lot of the interests, the interdisciplinary interests between the people that go there. But it is actually kind of funny, because any given day, like today will be sculpture kids and tomorrow will be the crazy poetry kids. And although you wish that they would join each other more, they already do, but then we have like public events where you kind of like, oh my God, I didn't know this many weird people came to the school. Yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of a big focus for us in trying to design the next semester, is really trying to kind of break down some of those barriers that I think people just set up for themselves. It's not that we don't want people to be able to have the kind of intensive conversation that and focus that is really great, like to take a specific medium and really look at that really deeply. We're trying to figure out a way where we can kind of tweak the curriculum so that the sculpture kids and the poetry kids just kind of have to be together at some point, and doing that sort of across lots of different disciplines is something we feel pretty strongly about, that a lot of really great stuff happens when that happens. So,
and I think there's a lot to be said about a group of people that come together that are there on purpose for no express reason besides engaging in critical discourse and talking about art. I mean, these are people who work full-time, who have their own art careers or aspirations towards an art career, who have their own families and friends and social circles, and commit to taking time to come and participate in these really intentional discussions or intentional things of that matter. And so the level of the discourse, even for people who are relatively new, people gain traction really quickly. You come into a space that feels welcoming, that also has a group of people that are equally as kind of nervous on the first day, just like at regular school. But you've got a mixture of people who, some have terminal degrees, some have never been to art school, some are painters who have seen Soho change since the 60s, some are just out of high school and have no formal education really whatsoever and things like that. So it's a really great cross-pollination, and people feel enfranchised to speak up and participate because there's not really like, it's not that there aren't consequences because we're a community and like obviously there are consequences when you're a group of people, but it feels a little more, you feel a little more welcome to bring up issues that might seem like lightning rods in a regular classroom, like talking about gender or sexuality or race or economics, privilege, things like that, that are sometimes hard to like throw in a class where people know that they're there for 90 minutes and everybody's inevitably doing the mental calculation of this class cost me this much per minute. And this person always takes it over here and I don't want to have that, like that kind of thing. It gets rid of some of that and it self-selects, where the people who don't like the vibe of the conversation that becomes very intense and real, maybe just don't come back. And you know, we don't have to ask them to leave. It's just self-selecting in a way that's kind of interesting.
Which kind of makes us happy too, because you should always know that you too can start your free art school.
Yeah, people outgrow it. I mean, people go to BHQFU for a couple years sometimes and they're like, you know what, this is, I've gotten what I need out of this, I'm going to go do my own thing. And that was, I think from day one, the idea was to like show people that you can just make an art school and you don't need all of the things that maybe one needs. I mean, we're 6 years later and are increasingly like legitimate, for lack of a better term, but you know, it's very funny to look back on bad photos from like 2009 that somebody shot, or class lists where people signed in on greasy paper plates from pizza and stuff like that, and that's like the history of the school, which really just shows that a bunch of people with a will can do something cool.
You mentioned that this event is a partial fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm curious how
we get money?
Well, Primarily, it's through private donation we do this event in the fall, and we do a big, like a more expensive kind of dinner auction event in the spring. That's what we've done for the last few years. That raises most of the money through private individuals, but we also are, starting to do all the things that nonprofits do. Like Sean spends a lot of time hunting for grants that we don't get.
We have a donation jar.
It's not your fault. Yeah, yeah. We have a donation jar that I think we probably raised like $200. But yeah, it's primarily at this point private individuals making donations.
Yeah. The other thing, though, that's kind of amazing is that, like, if you go on the website, and one of the cool things that students do is, like, there's all these different levels that you can donate at, and when we put out this annual book or we thank our donor list and things like that, it's basically just alphabetical. So, like, the kid who donates $25 one time a year because they happen to have just gotten paid and it's the beginning of the school year and they're excited, so they do that one-time $25 donation, are listed.
It's your shruggy matrix.
Oh, yeah. Shruggy matrix. They're listed next to, like major blue chip art collectors and donors and things like that. And there's no real like differentiation at this point, which is kind of cool. And then, but yeah, it's like every little bit. The other thing is the purpose of this party that is $30 is, as a student who takes these classes for free and things like that, you really do feel like one time a year, you're part of this micro fundraising campaign. And based on our student body, like they're gonna drink more than $30 worth of alcohol at this thing. Like they're gonna see Leaf and Francis and the Lights and like go through this insane, like absolute vodka forest that we're building and all this stuff. It's going to be like pretty outrageous. It's like certainly worth 2 movie tickets. And also there's a cool thing where like our benefactors can pay it forward with tickets and buy student tickets, and anybody who volunteers we bring into the party for free and stuff like that. But
Yeah, it's like just a crazy little like moment where like some kid that just watched like Basquiat for the first time on Netflix is standing next to like Bob Colacello or something, and it's bizarre and weird, and everybody has fun, and people still say it's the best party ever from last year. So I would do that.
It's part of the total, but you mentioned alcohol. Do your programs ever accept high school students before you accept?
woo, we're doing some high school
Talking about
programs actually. Yeah,
teens.
we've been kind of like baby stepping into that just because there's so many different things that come into play when you're not dealing with people who are adults who, like, the liability is just very different. But we have worked with Nurture Art, which is a nonprofit based in Bushwick, and done programs with them at different high schools around Brooklyn. Elizabeth Jager, who is one of our faculty members, who's an awesome sculptor, she teaches at Bushwick Leaders High School, and we did an exhibition with their students at the end of last year that was super awesome from their after-school program. We're working with them too to figure out some more stuff this year, and then we're kind of learning through other institutions how to reach out to that community. So we're also teaching with MoMA Teens in the spring. So BHQFU will lead a MoMA Teens class. And yeah, we're kind of like trying to figure out how do we make something that's accessible to all these different age groups, and where we're also being very responsible, because with minors it's a totally different kind of atmosphere. You have to have different learning outcomes or ideas. It has to be a little more structured than throw a bunch of adults together who all think critically. Like, you want them to feel like their time is really balanced, but we're always talking to people about how to reach out to people that are, adolescents, and help them understand that our position is that, especially if you grew up in one of the 5 boroughs and you come from a background where maybe college isn't a reality, but you're really interested in art, that this thing exists and is totally free, and you can basically go to BHQFU for a year or 2 and you're going to get the education and real world education that you would get through probably like an undergrad and maybe an MFA too at the same time. So yeah, I used to be a high school teacher, which is kind of weird.
Curious about the sort of relationship of Bruce Quality Foundation and the university. There seems to be like a really strong rejection of a lot of the sort of models of both education, art making, and institutional conversations that are happening. And at the same time, there's also this other part of it that's like a nonprofit that's getting legitimized as having a really traditional looking fundraising system, and that's looking to the same existing models that this sort of same institutions that you're maybe there's an argument that's critique, maybe it's not, like, that it sort of straddles both of these things at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially now that the university is getting is growing in the ways that it is. And do you guys feel like that there's something that happens when that shift happens that starts to limit the way in which you can continue to work, or do you guys find that it's just a depressing process or
Yeah, I think what you're pointing out, like as the school gains more legitimacy and as you said, like, takes on like fairly traditional nonprofit fundraising models, does that raise some kind of tension or question with the somewhat sort of anti-institutional ethos where we come from? Is that basically the question? It's a good one, and it's a conversation that we have a lot. I think what we tend to come back to is that, our project isn't to replace capitalism, just because we're really not qualified. If anyone's got any ideas, we'd be down to hear it. But I think,
Yeah, and I need to pay rent. So.
but no, I mean, I think there's certainly just like, yeah, the reality is like we exist in a society that like you currently kind of have to function within some version of capitalism in order to get anything done. But I think for us, so long as we're still able to ask those questions and to stop, to not let success be like the success, like fundraising success, be our like guiding force, which I think is what you see happen to. This has been on our minds a lot because we were very close to Cooper Union as an institution, and they've, as you're probably aware, have recently been going through huge financial turmoil. It seems like a very typical thing. This has happened at other schools where they kind of put their prize, their idea of being successful in terms of their fundraising ahead of their ideas about what they are as an institution. And I think for us, it's really about like always knowing that we can just like pull the rug out from under it, and that we don't let anything get ahead of us, so that, if we're not able to raise the amount of money that we need, then we have to be quick enough to think about how do we do it for less? How do we change and go in a different direction? Like what can we do with what we have? And that's okay. So we're always kind of torn between wanting to, on the one hand, there's a lot of value in the stability that you can have by like major building projects and long-term fundraising and investments and things like that. All that's interesting. We're not there yet at all. Like we're hand to mouth right now. But we're starting to have those conversations now, anticipating that, maybe someone in this room is going to write us a $10 million check, and we're going to have to think about how to deal with that. I'm guessing not, but see me afterwards if you're interested. But I don't know if there's anything you can do other than just try to stay focused on the mission and not let some other version of success get in the way of like actually fulfilling what you want to be doing.
Yeah, and we're relatively humble. Right now we're just one big like one-room classroom, and our website looks cool, and we do like amazing parties and stuff, but most of our funding just goes directly to paying instructors and rent most. So that's a good way to do it.
And I think having a background in, I worked as faculty and an arts administrator at a lot of different places, and have seen the way that arts administrations in the last 10 years at colleges have grown in what I think is egregious capacities, and the dissociation that they have from faculty who are increasingly adjunct, and the way that dollars are routed at particular schools, and the way that students are perceived in one way or another. I think that because I have that background, I'm so thankful to be working here now and like sleeping at night, and just kind of understanding that every time that we get a little like, when we start to resemble institutions, I kind of like take a step back from like, oh God, we're getting to like whatever, and then I just reflect on, for instance, what working at NYU was like. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, I think we're okay. And
Yeah, also, we have a very vocal community that always checks.
oh yeah,
our
they'll be
ego.
pretty gnarly if we do something that they don't like. Like, we have a very hard time getting away with things with our students. Like, they'll come in and kick the door down.
It took us 6 years to have an application. So
and we
there's-
might, yeah, and they got really mad at us. So
you had to
know.
like put your name on something before showing up. Like that took a long time. So
I think the gesture that we always do as a joke is like, we're just doing this. Like, trying to do both at the same time. But I don't know how we're doing on time. Are we like,
Maybe we can wrap up now, because if you're interested, I know Gene Feinberg's class is going to be continuing your discussion upstairs, and if you're
And 627.
627, but there's room for some additional people to attend that. So
yeah, and if you have class or something to go to, we're at our spot on 34 Avenue A, like, all the time. We definitely don't do 40-hour work weeks. So if you want to, like, we're around a ton, and you can just email us.
We have lots of events coming up.
Yeah, we have tons of events. Start to pay attention to stuff, and just come by and, like, become however much you want to be involved, you're welcome to. So
Thank you.
thanks very much.